Hey there, everybody. Welcome. We are here tonight in the middle of a study called A Man After God's Own Heart, the life of David in the Bible. And we're in 2 Samuel chapter 13. We're halfway through it. We covered verses 1 through 20 yesterday, and now we're going to finish the chapter 21 through, I think, 37 here. So almost right in the middle of the chapter. Last couple of days, we've talked about David's sin with Bathsheba, and then God telling him that there was going to be trouble in his house because of what he's done. The first thing we saw happen was the loss of the life of the baby that he had with Bathsheba after 1 week of age. And now the second thing we've seen, his son Amnon developed feelings for his half-sister Tamar, who's the full sister of Absalom. So Absalom and Amnon are only half brothers, but Absalom and Tamar were full brother sister, Amnon only sharing a father with Tamar and Absalom. So he has a friend named Jonadab. Jonadab convinces Amnon to pretend that he's sick, and when his sister comes to tend to his needs, he should try to seduce her. This is what Amnon does, but she resists his advances, and instead he grabs her and forces her and rapes her. Then he despises her, and instead of taking her as a wife or perhaps a concubine, not exactly sure how that would have played out, he throws her out of his house. The servant bolts the door. Once she's outside, she tears the multicolored robe that she's wearing, which was something the daughters of the king wore when they were still without husbands and were still virgins. Her brother Absalom sees this happen, and he knows what's going on. So that's where we pick it up. Verse 21 of 2 Samuel 13. If you can read along with me and follow along, I encourage you to do so. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. Well, I would hope so, right? One of your sons rapes your daughter. You ought to be very wroth. In fact, you ought to be absolutely furious and indignant over what's occurred. But here's the thing. David heard of these things. He was very wroth, but we're not told he did anything about it. Verse 22, And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. So Absalom here doesn't say a word, good or bad, to Amnon. He's giving him the silent treatment. He wants nothing to do with him. Basically, that old saying, you're dead to me. That's how Absalom viewed Amnon. Didn't speak to him at all because of what he did. And it came to pass after 2 full years. So now 2 years of time have passed. We're still not told that David did anything about what happened. He was angry, but he didn't do anything about it. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal Hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. So Absalom has a plan. Absalom is a long-term schemer, and we'll see that as we go through the life of David and the troubles that David had with his son Absalom. And the truth is, the reason David had the troubles with Absalom that he had is because he didn't deal with Tamar like he ought to have. Or with Amnon, I should say, regarding the Tamar situation. So 2 years have passed. Absalom has some sheep shearers here in this place called Baal Hazor, and he's going to invite everybody to come out, the king and all of his brothers, and he's going to use this as an opportunity to get to Amnon. So Absalom invited all the king's sons, verse 24, And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold now, thy servant hath sheep shearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And so Absalom invites his father, and he invites the servants of the king to come to this sheep shearing party, if you will. Verse 25, And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. So David declines the invitation. He does so on the basis of the bill that Absalom would get. If you're going to host the king and his servants, it's going to be quite a hefty bill that you're going to have after everything is said and done. And so David says, no, I don't think we should all come. It's going to cost you too much money. And he says, but I hope you have a great time. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why would he go with thee? But Absalom pressed him, and that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. So this should have raised more of an antenna in the mind of David here. Absalom says, well, how about send Amnon, if nobody else? Let him come. And David says, why would he go? You haven't even spoken to him for 2 years. You guys are dead to each other. Why would he go? And Absalom says, well, please, let Amnon and all of your other sons, let my brothers all come. Let's make it a family event in that way. Now, and David says, sure, fine, go ahead. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not. Have not I commanded you, be courageous and be valiant? So Absalom has this plan. When Amnon is really relaxed, he's had a lot to eat, a lot to drink, and he's relaxed, then he wants his servants, Absalom's servants, to kill Amnon. And he tells them, fear not, be courageous and valiant. The servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. So they kill him. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. So the rest of David's sons, they get out of there, and the servants that killed Amnon and were a part of it all, they get out of there. Everybody takes off. Notice the use of mules here. The Lord told Moses to tell the people they weren't used to use horses in battle or in everyday life, and so mules became the object that they used. Verse 30, it came to pass while they were in the way, meaning as everyone's escaping, that tidings came to David, so a message, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. So that's a gross exaggeration of what happened. Not all of David's sons were killed, only Amnon was killed. But the message that gets to David is that all of your sons are dead. Absalom killed them all. Then the king arose and tare his garments and lay on the earth. And all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And so David now is mourning again. He's mourned the loss of his dead baby. Now he's mourning the loss of who he thinks is all of his sons except for Absalom. The servants follow suit. They rend or tear their clothes as well. And look who shows back up. This guy from the early part of this chapter, when it said Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab. This is the brother of David's son, which would have made him Amnon and Absalom and Tamar's cousin. Jonadab shows up, the same Jonadab that convinced Amnon to have his way with his sister. So Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons. For Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. And so here you've got this guy named Jonadab who pretty much is playing the Eddie Haskell character, if you will. Old TV show in the United States, Leave It to Beaver. Eddie Haskell was one way when he was with the kids, and then he was all prim and proper and obedient and respectful when he was around the adults. And that's how Jonadab is. Jonadab, when he's around Amnon's telling him, hey, I'll tell you how you can get what you want. And he's the one who put all of this into motion. If you will, Jonadab is indirectly, if not directly, responsible for what Amnon did to Tamar, because he's the one who encouraged him to do it. And so now Jonadab's playing the goody-goody. Oh, King David, let me tell you, as your servant, not all of your sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead. And I'll tell you who did it. It was that son Absalom of yours. He's been planning this for 2 years. Verse 33, now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. And that's also Jonadab speaking, telling David he shouldn't be this upset. Only Amnon is dead. And how's that for comfort? Oh, king, don't be so upset. Not all of your sons are dead. Just Amnon is dead. Absalom's killed him. And so Jonadab, I think, is taking great pleasure in giving this news to David, because he revels in the drama. He loves to stir things up and get people at odds with each other, and that's what he's doing here. But Absalom fled, so Absalom's getting out of town. And the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, behold, the king's sons come, as thy servant said, so it is. Notice, hey, didn't I tell you this is the way it was going to happen? Your sons are not dead. Here they come after all, because the watchman sees the returning party to Jerusalem and to the palace. And Jonadab trying to get more credit, more clout, more respect. See, king, I told you everything's going to be okay. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came and lifted up their voice and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. The family is torn, it's divided, it's in shambles. And you say, oh, and it's that Amnon's fault, or oh, it's that Jonadab's fault. Actually, a lot of this rests on the shoulder of David. God told David, look, you're going to have a mess on your hands now. Your own house isn't going to be in order. And so David, the truth is, David has some amazing, incredible characteristics. We call him a man after God's own heart because that's what the Bible calls him. God chose him to replace King Saul. He saw the heart of David. He knew what David was. But I'll tell you, one thing David wasn't great at, being a father. He never seems to be there for his children. Now, I'm using some generalities there. Maybe he was. Maybe the scripture just doesn't tell us. But when you see these kinds of things going on in the family, and particularly this matter of your son raped your daughter, and you don't do anything about it at all. You allow him just to go on about his day and his life as though nothing happened. That's being an absentee father, if you ask me. So, everyone is mourning, everyone is weeping. Verse 37, but Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. That means mourning over Amnon. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years. So now we're 5 years away from the rape of Tamar. Tamar is raped by Amnon. 2 years pass and Amnon is killed. And now 3 years Absalom is in hiding. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. So now David, after 3 years, he wants Absalom to come home. He wants things to be made back to normal. His grieving and mourning over the loss of Amnon is over, and he just wants to be back with his son again, but Absalom's still gone. And that's where we'll pick it up in chapter number 14. God bless you. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.